Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Have you ever looked at a family member and suddenly realized that to them, you aren't a sister, a daughter, or a friend? You are simply an ATM. Some betrayals don't come with screaming matches. They arrive quietly, printed on a piece of cardstock at an airport terminal. Today's story follows Fiona. At 32, Fiona had built a highly successful boutique real estate firm in New York from the ground up. She was a self-made, fiercely independent African-American woman who had spent the last decade working 80-hour weeks. But despite her success, she carried a heavy, invisible burden. She was the designated fixer for her older half-sister, Chloe, and her brother-in-law, Derek. The air inside Terminal 4 at JFK Airport smelled of roasted coffee, expensive duty-free perfume, and the low, anxious hum of thousands of people rushing to be somewhere else. Fiona stood near the international check-in counters, her tailored camel coat draped over her arm, watching her half-sister approach. Chloe and Derek did not pack light. They were pushing 2 heavily loaded luggage carts holding 4 oversized Louis Vuitton suitcases. Suitcases Fiona recognized instantly because she had paid off the credit card bill for them 2 Christmases ago. Chloe, in her mid-40s, was dressed in what she considered airport chic, a cashmere lounge set, oversized designer sunglasses indoors, and a perfectly blown-out silk press. Derek walked beside her, casually scrolling through his phone, looking entirely unbothered by the chaos of the terminal. This trip to Paris was supposed to be a reset. A week in the City of Light to reconnect as a family, Chloe had called it, her voice trembling slightly over the phone a month prior as she complained about how disconnected they had all become. Fiona, exhausted from closing 3 commercial deals in a row, had given in. She booked the flights, reserved a stunning boutique hotel in Le Marais, and arranged the private transfers. Total cost? North of $25,000, all sitting squarely on Fiona's platinum card. "Fiona, finally!" Chloe sang out, waving a manicured hand as she breached the crowd. She didn't offer a hug, just a quick performative air kiss near Fiona's cheek. Derek insisted we stop at the lounge in the city before we got here. Traffic was a nightmare. "We're checked in," Derek added smoothly, not looking up from his screen. Chloe printed the boarding passes at the kiosk while I dropped the bags. "Great," Fiona said, feeling the familiar tight knot of fatigue forming at the base of her neck. "Let's head to security. I'd love to get a proper meal in the first-class lounge before we board." Chloe paused. A fleeting look passed between her and Derek, the kind of look people share when they are about to execute a rehearsed plan. Chloe reached into her designer tote and pulled out 3 stiff, rectangular boarding passes. She kept 2 tucked tightly against her palm and handed the 3rd to Fiona. Fiona looked down at the paper. "Seat 38B, Zone 5. She blinked, momentarily confused by the ink. 38B! That was a middle seat, in the very back of the economy cabin, right next to the lavatories. Fiona looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Chloe, what is this? I booked 3 first-class, fully refundable tickets. The confirmation email—" "Oh, I know, sweetie," Chloe interrupted, her voice dropping into a sickeningly sweet, patronizing register. She reached out and patted Fiona's arm as if consoling a toddler. "But you know how Derek's sciatica has been acting up lately. And honestly, my anxiety on long flights is just getting worse as I get older. We spoke to the agent, and they said the flight was overbooked in the premium cabins, but they had 2 first-class seats together." Fiona stared at her sister. The bustling noise of the airport seemed to drop away, leaving a ringing silence in her ears. "And you kept them for yourselves?" Derek finally looked up, offering a practiced diplomatic smile. "Come on, Fee. You're young. You do Pilates, you're in great shape. You can bounce back from an 8-hour flight in economy in no time. We're in our 40s. Our joints just can't take it anymore." "Exactly," Chloe chimed in, adjusting her sunglasses on top of her head. "Besides, you're the one who is always talking about how we need to take better care of ourselves. Family makes sacrifices for family, right? It's just a seat. It's really not a big deal. Please don't make a scene about it." Don't make a scene. Those 4 words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Fiona stood perfectly still. For years she had been making things small, She had quietly wired money when Derek's business ventures stalled. She had paid the property taxes on their suburban home when they claimed they were drowning. She had allowed herself to be cast as the reliable workhorse, so Chloe and Derek could play the part of the affluent, successful couple on Instagram. She looked at the boarding pass again. Seat 38B. They hadn't just taken the luxury she paid for, they had banished her to the most uncomfortable corner of the plane, expecting her to simply nod, smile, and absorb the disrespect as she always did. They believed her money was their right, and her comfort was irrelevant. "You're right," Fiona said quietly. Her voice was remarkably steady. "It is just a seat." Chloe let out a dramatic sigh of relief, clearly believing she had won the negotiation. "Oh, thank God. I knew you'd understand, Fee. You're the best. We'll meet you at the baggage claim in Paris, okay? Or actually, since your zone boards last, just text us when you land." "Sure," Fiona said. She didn't smile. She didn't yell. She simply turned on her heel and began walking away, not toward the standard security line, but back toward the premium check-in counters. "Wait, where are you going?" Chloe called out, a hint of confusion breaking through her smug exterior. "Economy security is that way." Fiona didn't look back. The click of her heels against the polished terrazzo floor was the only answer she gave. She approached the first-class priority desk. The agent, a sharply dressed woman in a navy uniform, offered a warm, professional smile. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you?" Fiona placed her passport on the marble counter, followed by the heavy metal platinum credit card she had used to book the flights. "Hi," Fiona said, her tone polite but laced with absolute authority. "I need to make a modification to a reservation. The confirmation code is X7B9P2. The agent typed quickly, her eyes scanning the monitor. "Ah, yes. A party of 3 to Paris. I see your travel companions just checked their bags." "Yes, about that," Fiona said, leaning slightly closer to the desk. "I am the primary account holder and the sole purchaser of this itinerary. I need you to split the PNR. I want my ticket separated from the other 2. "Certainly, Miss Carter. And once they are split?" Fiona looked out toward the terminal. In the distance, she could see Chloe and Derek joining the first-class security line, laughing about something, completely oblivious to the administrative execution about to take place. "Cancel them," Fiona said smoothly. The agent paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She looked up, slightly surprised. "You want to cancel the other 2 passengers? The flight leaves in less than 2 hours. Standard cancellation fees won't apply since these are fully refundable fares, but their bags will need to be pulled from the aircraft." "That is perfectly fine," Fiona replied. "Cancel Chloe and Derek's tickets immediately. Issue the refund to this card, and with the remaining funds..." Fiona offered a small, genuine smile for the first time that day. "I believe you have one of the private first-class suites still available on this flight. I'd like to upgrade my own seat." The agent's professional demeanor remained intact, but a glint of respect flashed in her eyes. "Right away, Miss Carter. Processing the cancellations now." 3 minutes later, Fiona walked away from the desk holding a crisp, newly printed boarding pass. Seat 1A, first-class suite. She bypassed the main terminal entirely, gliding through the expedited VIP security lane, and stepped into the hushed, luxurious sanctuary of the airline's private lounge. She ordered a glass of vintage champagne, sat back in a velvet armchair overlooking the tarmac, and pulled her phone from her purse. She opened her text messages. The group chat with Chloe and Derek was at the top. Fiona typed slowly, ensuring every word was deliberate. "You were right, Chloe. Family shouldn't have to suffer. I decided I couldn't bear the thought of Derek's sciatica flaring up, so I canceled your tickets to save him the pain. The airline is pulling your bags now. Have a safe drive back to New Jersey." She hit send. Then she switched her phone to airplane mode, took a slow sip of her champagne, and watched the blinking lights of the runway against the darkening New York sky. The trip to Paris hadn't even started, but Fiona already knew it was going to be the best vacation of her life. The flight to Charles de Gaulle was 9 hours of uninterrupted velvet-lined peace. Fiona slept in a fully flat bed, woke up to fresh espresso, and watched the sunrise over the Atlantic. For the first time in years, her phone was blissfully silent. No emergency texts from Chloe about a misunderstanding with a contractor. No frantic calls from Derek asking for a short-term bridge loan to cover his car payment. Just the quiet hum of the aircraft engines and the exquisite taste of freedom. But back at JFK's Terminal 4, freedom looked very different. While Fiona was somewhere over the ocean, Chloe and Derek were experiencing a very public, very humiliating reality check. According to the airline logs, and a highly panicked voicemail Chloe left that Fiona wouldn't listen to until she landed, the fallout had been immediate. Standing at the first-class security checkpoint, Chloe had pulled out her phone to show the TSA agent her digital boarding pass. Instead, she found Fiona's text message. Witnesses nearby would later recall a woman in oversized designer sunglasses letting out a noise that sounded halfway between a gasp and a scream. Derek had snatched the phone from her hand, his face draining of color. Rushing back to the priority desk, they demanded the agent reinstate their tickets. "I'm sorry, sir," the agent had said coldly, the same agent who had just upgraded Fiona. "The primary cardholder canceled the reservations. Your bags have already been offloaded and are waiting at Carousel 6. Derek, trying to maintain his polished, wealthy facade, had slammed his own gold credit card onto the marble counter. "Fine. Put it on my card. 2 first-class tickets on the same flight. Now." The agent typed the details. The machine beeped. A glaring red error message flashed on the terminal. Declined. Derek's jaw tightened. "Try the joint account card," he snapped at Chloe. She frantically dug through her Louis Vuitton tote, producing a sleek black card. She handed it over, her hands shaking slightly. The agent swiped it. Beep. Declined. Insufficient funds. By now, a line of impatient travelers had formed behind them. The whispers started. Chloe, who spent her entire life curating an image of effortless wealth for her 20,000 Instagram followers, was standing at a premium airline desk, unable to afford a ticket she had just bragged about online. The ultimate embarrassment wasn't just missing the trip to Paris. It was the world seeing that they never actually belonged in that line to begin with. Without Fiona's wallet, they were just 2 people with heavy luggage and maxed-out credit. They didn't go to Paris. They took a $120 Uber back to New Jersey in complete, suffocating silence. 12 hours later, Fiona stepped onto the wrought iron balcony of her suite at the Hotel Plaza Athénée. The Eiffel Tower glittered in the distance, cutting through the crisp Parisian evening. She poured herself a glass of Bordeaux, feeling the tight coil of stress that usually sat in her chest finally begin to unwind. She opened her laptop, intending to send a quick out-of-office reminder to her real estate team. Instead, a high-priority email sitting at the top of her inbox caught her eye. It was from David, her wealth manager and lead accountant back in Manhattan. The subject line read, "Urgent. Suspicious activity/title alert on the Montclair property." Fiona frowned, setting her wine glass down on the bistro table. The Montclair property was a sprawling 4-bedroom colonial home in a high-end New Jersey suburb. Fiona had purchased it entirely in cash 3 years ago. It was an investment property, but she had allowed Chloe and Derek to live there rent-free under the strict condition that Derek pay the property taxes and the HOA fees while he got his consulting business off the ground. She clicked the email. "Fiona, I know you're in Paris, but this couldn't wait. My team was doing our quarterly sweep of your asset portfolio, and an automated alert triggered on the Montclair house. A massive hard pull was made on your credit profile 2 weeks ago, and a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit, HELOC, has been opened against the property. The draw amount is $400,000. The funds were wired out yesterday to an LLC registered under Derek's name. We did not authorize this. I pulled the preliminary paperwork from the county clerk. Your signature is on the closing documents, but it looks forged. Call me the second you read this." The cool Parisian breeze suddenly felt like ice. Fiona stared at the screen, the numbers blurring for a fraction of a second before snapping sharply back into focus. $400,000. This wasn't freeloading anymore. This wasn't taking advantage of a younger sister's generosity to score a free first-class flight or a designer handbag. This was wire fraud. This was a federal crime. Fiona didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't know how to fight back. Instead, a terrifying absolute calm washed over her. She closed her eyes, piecing together the timeline. 2 weeks ago, Derek had stopped by her office unannounced. He had brought her a coffee and asked her to quickly sign a stack of standard HOA proxy forms for the Montclair Neighborhood Board. She had been on a frantic conference call and had signed the pages without looking closely at the bottom sheets. He slipped the mortgage authorization into the stack. And the trip to Paris? The trip Chloe had aggressively pushed for, begging Fiona to pay for everything so they could reconnect? It wasn't a family vacation. It was a distraction. They needed Fiona out of the country, away from her mail, and away from her accountant, while the $400,000 wire transfer cleared. Fiona picked up her phone and dialed David's number. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me you saw it," David said, his voice tense. "I saw it," Fiona replied. Her voice was terrifyingly soft, stripped of any familial warmth. "Did the wire clear?" "Yes. It landed in an account for Apex Consulting LLC, Derek's shell company. Fiona, this is felony forgery. If we freeze the account now, we might be able to claw back the funds, but we have to involve the authorities. I need to know how you want to handle this. He's your brother-in-law." Fiona walked back out to the balcony. She looked at the glittering lights of Paris, a city she had paid thousands of dollars to visit, only to realize her presence here was nothing more than a calculated trap set by her own blood. "David," Fiona said, her grip on the phone tightening, "draft the fraud affidavit. Get our litigation attorneys on the line. And book me the first flight back to JFK tomorrow morning." "You're coming back already? You just landed." "I am," Fiona said, her eyes cold. "Chloe and Derek wanted to play games with my assets. I'm going to go home and show them exactly what happens when you steal from the house." The flight back to New York was entirely different from the flight to Paris. Fiona didn't sleep and she didn't touch the champagne. She paid for the in-flight Wi-Fi and spent the next 8 hours doing what she did best, building an impenetrable case. By the time her tires touched down at JFK, the sadness of being betrayed by her only sister had burned away, leaving behind a cold, sharp, and highly focused anger. She didn't go to her apartment. She took a black car straight to a glass and steel skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, the offices of her legal team. Walking into the high-end conference room, the air smelled of black coffee and laser printer ink. David, her wealth manager, was already there, flanked by Sarah, a ruthless corporate litigator who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. Spread across the mahogany table were bank statements, property deeds, and wire transfer logs. "Welcome back," David said grimly, sliding a thick manila folder toward her. "I wish the circumstances were better." Fiona dropped her designer bag onto an empty leather chair and leaned over the table. "Show me the forgery." Sarah opened the folder. Inside was the home equity line of credit agreement. There, at the bottom of the last page, was Fiona's signature. Fiona stared at it. It was a good fake. Derek had clearly spent hours practicing the loop of her F and the sharp tail of her A. But it was undeniably forged. He had slipped this single page into the stack of routine homeowner association proxies she had hastily signed 2 weeks prior. The bank processed the $400,000 draw against the Montclair property equity 4 days ago, Sarah explained, tapping the paper with her pen. The funds bypassed your primary accounts entirely and were wired straight into a newly formed LLC called Apex Consulting. Derek is the sole registered agent. Fiona crossed her arms, her mind racing. Derek hasn't consulted on anything in his life except which golf clubs to buy. What did he do with the money? Did he pay off their credit cards? "No," David interjected, bringing up a screen on his tablet. "That's the strangest part. He didn't touch their personal debt. The entire $400,000 is sitting untouched in an offshore escrow account. It doesn't make any sense. Why commit a federal crime just to let the money sit there?" Fiona frowned. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the yellow cabs crawling along the Manhattan streets below. People like Chloe and Derek didn't sit on money. They spent it. They flaunted it. Unless the money wasn't meant to be spent. unless it was meant to be shown. "David," Fiona asked quietly, turning around, "can you pull up Chloe's recent emails, the ones she forwarded me when she was begging to plan this Paris trip?" David brought them up on the conference room monitor. Fiona scanned the forwarded threads. Most were just links to luxury hotels and Michelin star restaurants. But then, Fiona noticed a name buried in a CC line on an email Chloe had accidentally forwarded a month ago. Laurent Dubois. "Who is Laurent Dubois?" Fiona asked. Sarah's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. A few seconds later, a LinkedIn profile appeared on the screen. "Laurent Dubois. He's a major player in European luxury real estate. He runs a massive investment syndicate out of Paris." The puzzle pieces suddenly snapped together with terrifying clarity. The room went dead silent as Fiona realized the true scale of what her sister had done. "The Paris trip," Fiona whispered, her voice laced with absolute disgust. "It was never about family." "What do you mean?" David asked. "Chloe didn't just want a free vacation," Fiona said, pacing the room now, her mind connecting the dots. "She set up a meeting with Dubois in Paris. She's been masquerading on social media for years, pretending my success is a family business. She was going to pitch Dubois for a massive international partnership. But to get a seat at his table, she needed to show proof of liquid assets. That's the $400,000 sitting in escrow. It's her buy-in." Sarah's eyes widened as she caught on. "And she wanted you in Paris." "As the prop," Fiona finished, her jaw clenching. "She was going to parade me around at dinners, introduce me as her junior partner, use my actual real estate portfolio and my reputation to close a multi-million-dollar deal with Dubois, while I sat there completely oblivious, thinking we were just having a nice family dinner." It was a masterclass in manipulation. Chloe had weaponized Fiona's love for family to secure a free flight, steal $500,000 of her equity, and use her as bait for a fraudulent international business deal. And she had the nerve to try and put Fiona in a middle seat in economy while she did it. "Felony wire fraud, identity theft, and attempted corporate fraud," Sarah said, closing her laptop with a definitive snap. "Fiona, if you take this to the authorities, Derek is looking at a minimum of 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Chloe will likely face conspiracy charges. They will lose everything." Fiona looked at the forged signature on the table. For a brief second, she thought of the times she had brushed Chloe's hair when they were kids. She thought of the Thanksgivings they had shared. Then she remembered the smirk on Chloe's face at the airport. Family makes sacrifices for family, right? Fiona pulled out her phone. She didn't call the police. Not yet. First, she opened her contacts and found the number for Tyler, Chloe, and Derek's 16-year-old son. Tyler was away at a private boarding school, tuition fully paid by Fiona. He was a good kid, smart, humble, and completely unlike his parents. He didn't deserve to be collateral damage. Fiona quickly transferred enough money into a private trust account to cover the rest of Tyler's tuition and living expenses through his senior year. She ensured neither Chloe nor Derek could ever access a dime of it. "Sarah," Fiona said, her voice dropping all traces of warmth, turning entirely into the ruthless businesswoman who had conquered the New York real estate market. "Draft the eviction notice for the Montclair property. I want it served immediately." "We usually give 30 days, Sarah noted. "They aren't tenants. They are squatters who committed federal fraud against the homeowner," Fiona replied coldly. "Give them 24 hours. Tomorrow afternoon we are going to New Jersey. I want you there, and I want the local sheriff there to enforce the notice." "Oh, and David?" "Yes, Fiona? Freeze the Montclair title so they can't move that $400,000 anywhere else. And draft an email to Laurent Dubois in Paris. Let him know exactly who he was dealing with." Fiona picked up her designer bag and walked toward the door. The time for being the supportive younger sister was officially over. It was time to collect the debt. The Montclair house was a stunning piece of real estate. Set back from the road behind a row of ancient oak trees, its large bay windows glowed warmly against the fading New Jersey twilight. As Fiona's black SUV pulled into the circular driveway, she could see shadows moving inside. Chloe and Derek weren't just home. They were entertaining. 3 luxury cars, none of which belonged to Fiona, were parked near the garage. Through the glass double doors, Fiona could see a catered spread on the kitchen island and a group of Chloe's country club friends holding wine glasses. Sarah, Fiona's lawyer, adjusted her briefcase in the passenger seat. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready for 10 years, Fiona replied. Behind their SUV, a Montclair Police Department cruiser pulled up quietly, its headlights cutting through the dusk. 2 uniformed deputies stepped out. Fiona had requested a civil standby, a police presence to ensure the peace was kept while serving an eviction and presenting evidence of a felony. Fiona walked up the stone steps, her heels clicking sharply. She didn't knock. It was her house. She pushed the front door open and walked straight into the foyer, followed closely by Sarah and the 2 deputies. Laughter echoed from the open-concept kitchen. Chloe was holding court by the marble island, wearing a silk dress, pouring a heavy measure of Cabernet. So I told Fiona, honey, you just go to Paris and handle your business crisis. We'll take a rain check, Chloe was saying, her voice dripping with performative martyrdom. Derek and I just couldn't enjoy first class knowing she was so stressed out. Family supports family, you know? That is a fascinating version of events, Chloe, Fiona said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. The laughter died instantly. Several guests turned around, their smiles freezing when they saw Fiona, and more importantly, the 2 police officers standing by the doorway. Chloe's wine glass slipped slightly in her hand. The color drained from her face, leaving her expensive foundation looking suddenly ashen. Fiona? What? I thought you were in France. Why are the police here? Derek emerged from the patio holding a pair of grilling tongs. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes darted from Fiona, to the lawyer, to the badges on the deputies' chests. The confident, smooth-talking brother-in-law evaporated in an instant, replaced by a man who looked like he was about to be physically sick. I came back early, Fiona said smoothly, stepping fully into the kitchen. The guests awkwardly stepped aside, parting like the Red Sea. It turns out my business crisis wasn't in Paris. It was right here in my kitchen. Fiona gestured to Sarah. The lawyer stepped forward, unclasped her leather briefcase, and pulled out a thick manila folder. She didn't hand it to Chloe. She dropped it directly onto the center of the marble island, right next to the charcuterie board. The heavy smack of the paper made several people flinch. What is this? Derek asked, his voice cracking. That, Fiona said, her eyes locking onto his, is a copy of the $400,000 home equity line of credit you took out against my property 2 weeks ago. And right on top is the signature page you forged. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. A woman in a tennis skirt quickly put her drink down and whispered to her husband. They began inching toward the coat rack. Chloe's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Derek, waiting for him to spin a lie, to smooth it over, but Derek was paralyzed. Did you really think my accounting firm wouldn't notice a hard pull on my credit? Fiona asked, her voice dangerously calm. Or did you think the Paris trip would keep me distracted long enough for you to wire the money to Laurent Dubois and secure your little European investment scam? At the mention of Dubois, Chloe's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. Fiona, please. You don't understand. We were going to pay it back. Dubois is a billionaire. If we just showed him we had liquid capital, we were going to get a percentage of his new development. We were doing it for us, for the family. There is no us, Chloe. There is me, working 80-hour weeks, and there is you, stealing my equity to play pretend, Fiona said. She pointed to the folder. Right now that money is frozen. The title is locked. And Laurent Dubois received a very detailed email from my legal team this morning regarding your fraudulent business practices. Your deal is dead. Derek finally found his voice. Fiona, look, we messed up. I'm sorry, but you can't bring the cops into this. I'll go to jail. That is entirely up to you, Fiona said, looking at her watch. As of this exact moment, you have 2 choices. Choice A. I hand this folder to the deputies standing behind me. I press federal charges for wire fraud and identity theft. You will be arrested in front of your friends, and you will likely spend the next 5 to 10 years in a federal penitentiary. Derek swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. And choice B? Choice B, Fiona said, her tone absolute. You and Chloe have exactly 24 hours to pack whatever fits into your cars and vacate my property. You will sign a full confession and a waiver releasing any and all claims to this house. If I ever see your faces again, or if you ever ask me for a single dime, I revert to choice A. Do we have an understanding? Chloe burst into tears. Real ugly tears. The facade was completely shattered. You're kicking us out? Fiona will be homeless. We have nothing. What about Tyler? He's your nephew. You're going to put a 16-year-old boy on the street because you're mad about a plane ticket? It was the ultimate manipulation tactic, using the child as a shield. But Fiona had already anticipated it. Fiona didn't flinch. Leave Tyler out of this. He is the only person in this family with any integrity, and he is exactly why I'm selling this house. Chloe looked up, confused. Selling it? Yes, Fiona said softly, the ultimate checkmate settling over the room. The house goes on the market Monday, but the profits aren't going into my bank account. Every single penny of equity from this property is being transferred into a locked, irrevocable trust fund in Tyler's name. It will pay for his senior year, his college tuition, and his first down payment on a house. Fiona leaned in slightly, making sure Chloe heard every single word. Tyler is going to be incredibly well taken care of. He will have the head start in life that I had to build for myself, but the trust is heavily restricted. If either of you tries to withdraw a single cent, the fund dissolves, and the money goes to charity. You get nothing. You take your designer bags, and you leave. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The guests had completely stopped moving. Chloe stared at Fiona, realizing for the first time in her life that there was no loophole, no tears, no guilt trips, and no manipulation could fix this. The bank of Fiona was permanently closed. 24 hours, Derek, Fiona said, turning her back on them. Sarah will be here tomorrow at 6 p.m. for the keys. Fiona walked back through the foyer, nodding politely to the deputies. Thank you, officers. We're done here. She stepped out into the cool evening air. The heavy oak doors closed behind her, shutting away the crying, the excuses, and a decade of ungrateful burdens. As she climbed into the back of her SUV, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler. Hey, Aunt Fee. The school just emailed me about my tuition being fully covered. Did you do that? Are you okay? Fiona smiled. It was the first time she had smiled genuinely in weeks. She typed back quickly. I'm doing great, Ty. Study hard. I'm so proud of you. She locked her phone and looked out the window as the car rolled down the driveway, leaving the Montclair house behind. She didn't know where she was going to have dinner tonight. She didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But as the New York skyline appeared in the distance, glowing against the dark sky, Fiona took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she was traveling completely baggage-free.